Mr. Boyd,
incident response to terrorism bombings.
That's item 21.
Well, it's also related to what the police department does on a day-to-day basis, which is what I'm talking about right now.
Well, right now we're looking over the report as presented. If you'd like to.
Well, and I'm also concerned with this report as it's presented because of the fact that there was training conducted dealing with tactics that were, that I don't know where those tactics are coming from. Where were they trained on those tactics? Who set up the training for the tactical maneuvers as presented in this report?
Our team leaders did.
The team leaders did. And where did they get their training from?
I would have to check to see where we sent them to training. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Because a lot of these...
What is the concern in relation to...
Well, the concern is that...
I guess I don't get where you're going with your concern about the sharing of information and resources.
Oh, some of it is the sharing of information and resources, but some of it's also the sharing of training. And if there's training being received, I would like to know what types of things they're being trained in, and how they implement their training. Because based on home rule, we are supposed to be able to govern ourselves. And if there was a couple of examples of situations that could possibly occur, would be ones where, for example, dealing with tactics of entering a home. It mentions in this report about mass evacuation and shelter. Part of tactical training would be mass evacuation and shelter. So what do you do if someone does not want to leave? If they don't want to go to the shelter, if they don't want to be mass evacuated, do you go into their home and take them out and move them to the shelter against their wishes? Or do you quarantine them? And if you quarantine them, you know, is that not an infringement? As a board, as the government here in the Tomah, if we were to decide we don't want our citizens mass evacuated or quarantined, and we were to say, Police Chief Revels, do not do this to our citizens, do we have the power, or will we be superseded by a higher authority?
That's not what we're discussing right now.
Mr. Boyd,
it's part of this whole thing.
In regards to the monthly report that's before us, if you have questions about that training, I'm sure the chief will try to answer them as much as he can, you know, right here. But you know, you're getting into some of the legislation, and that might be something we
legislation dealing with home rule, dealing with what we govern. We represent this town. I represent a portion of this town. And this is uncomfortable to talk about it, but it is the law. It is happening in the city.
It's absolutely very important to talk about, but you're bringing up some large issues that if we can focus on them as a named item, we can all prepare ourselves. If you'd like to prepare a presentation, you're bringing up some issues I'm very interested in. I'm sure the rest of us are.
I have a problem with bringing up it as a named item because I cannot set the agenda. And if I bring it up now as a named item on a separate piece of agenda, it can be voted down and never discussed. It is on the agenda now as part of the police report. So I am bringing it up now to bring people's attention to what the law says. I didn't write this report. I didn't sign it. The Governor Doyle signed it. This is happening. We are working with different agencies. And there is a plan in place to work with all of the local levels of government. And this is not something that I enjoy talking about. In fact, it scares the heck out of me.
Well, it's very important to talk about. However, we have a report that's before us, and if there's content in that report you have questions on, such as the excellent question you asked about that less than lethal device, that's something that we can look at in this report. But without some of the copies, I don't know if our discussion can be as valuable as it possibly could be without the copies of the, for example, the home rule that you have before you. So if
we should all be familiar with home rule.
Absolutely. If we can put this as an item, I certainly, as chairman of this committee of the whole, we just ratified our different procedures for having things added to agendas, and we now have a vice president of the city council to have a second opinion on whether things get on the agenda. But you know, I could say to you right here and now that there would be I would personally find very, very few things that I'm not interested in as a member of government, as well as the people around us. So we do have a procedure in place that would allow us to put things or not on the agendas. And
I'm well aware of the procedure.
I'm thinking you're getting near the edge of kind of what the police report contains and kind of what we can get as far as a good value out of it.
It's on the agenda, correct?
The right documentation to be with you in your discussion.
Well, it may seem like it's on the edge, but it's there. We are talking about the training that police receive. It's on there. One of the items is training.
Certainly, there's training listed on the report, and the questions are valuable on that, but you're giving us further information on documents that we just don't have in front of us. So I'm just voicing my concern that we're not getting as much potential value out of it as we could with the proper documents.
Oh, I agree that we're not getting the right amount of value out of this. I'm not questioning that. I believe that I have access to information that everybody else has not had access to yet, review, because I have read this. But it goes beyond just this report. When I first was elected to this position, I talked about the Patriot Act, and I was told that that is a national governmental issue that does not deal with us. Well, part of that is dealing with us. We are in here. We are listed, talked about in this report. So when I say that we need to discuss this, we do need to discuss it. And I'm willing to, put it on the agenda for the next month, but I know exactly what will happen is it'll get voted down and not put on the agenda, and it won't be discussed. So what really scares me right now is that we have a government in this city that is running this city that does not know what its police department is doing with other agencies and with the greater Homeland Security agencies.
Well, we can't address your opinions, right now, and they're, you're right, and but do you have any specific items as far as Chairman, as far as I'm trying to run this meeting? I'd like to move forward with questions that we have on the police report documents that are before us and that we could get the most value from. You've described some issues that are very interesting and very important, and I'd like us to
that was the reason why I first asked about the tactical medical issues.
Sure.
Because
that's contained in this report.
Because part of the idea is it just says tactical medical issues. But the question I have is what happens if there is a viral outbreak and people need to be force vaccinated? Will we force vaccinate people? And also, do we do that? Is that something that we'd be trained to do? Would we be going around vaccinating people against their will?
That certainly is something that the health department of Monroe County would make a decision on.
And even if they did do that, like you said, if it was something that the Monroe County made an issue on, that would be Monroe County, but then we would have to decide as a city whether we would go along with it as part of the home rule. But on top of that, if we are going to vaccinate people against their will, we have to also bear in mind that Governor Walker at the beginning of this year signed a bill that said that all vaccine manufacturers and medical device manufacturers are not held liable if somebody were to die from their medications or their medical device, even if that device or medication is recalled years later.
Mr. Boy, I believe that you are straying very far from the issue of that. It's not an agenda item. If you feel strongly about it, you could have called me or the chairman previously. We could have got it on the agenda, and if you want it on the agenda next month, we certainly could do that. But you're getting into areas that certainly is not on the agenda tonight to get into details about vaccines and forced vaccines and so on. So legally, I think it's...
I can't.
Well, we could say it's out of order because we are talking about the training that Police Chief Revels is requesting, which is also on here. Now, if you would like me to bring this up again later on, I certainly will bring it up again later on because he is talking about dealing with response to terrorist bombings and incidents.
Okay, very, very well. And that is important that we stick to the document as far as the police department monthly report goes. To the text in the document here, if there's, as you said, questions about those terminologies, but the medical assistance or the SL6 less than lethal device, if there are other of those, or Do you have any further, those detailed questions based on this report at this point, or?
Well,